I'm Tom Vasel. Welcome to another shelf review in the Dice Tower Library. We're at the very bottom now of Rack 11. Woo! Look at all these war games and historical games there. And that's kind of what's on these shelves. This is the very bottom. So I'm going to start off here with a bunch of me saying, I don't know. And there are several games on the shelf that I don't know as much about. And the first two are in that category, 1565 and then 1066. Tears to Many Mothers, which I think is kind of a good name. I know the different events that happened on these dates, but I don't know much about these games, but I've heard good things about them. Now, that being said, I don't believe I've seen these checked out of our library yet. So if they don't, I may have to eventually pull them, but we'll have to wait and see. Right next to that is Freedom, which is along those same lines. Again, these are all heavier war games than I normally want to play for myself personally, but I want to have a well-rounded library. Now, next to that are some games I do know well. That's Wings of Glory. And there's two different versions. There's the World War I version and the World War II version. Both of them have some similarities to them, and these were the precursors to X-Wing. So if you ever played Star Wars X-Wing, these are the same things. You have these different airplanes. You use cards to show their movement. It's a bit of a two-dimensional thing. There's some three-dimensional rules, but it's fairly two-dimensional airplane combat. But it's really well done, and these kind of, I think I like X-Wing better. I would rather play that, but it's still nice to have these in the library. Then we have one of the most famous games in the world, Diplomacy, and boy, I hate it. But you know what? Not only did I put it in the library, but there's upgraded pieces inside. I haven't seen many games of Diplomacy at a Dice Tower Con. I've seen it at conventions. There's whole Diplomacy tournaments. But it definitely is a game that's set up that way, where people get around a table and they have to make decisions and talk back and forth, write commands, and then turn them in and backstab and just cheat each other. It's a very strenuous game. It's the OG of the social deduction games, I suppose, in many ways, Diplomacy. Then we have another game I don't know much about, Caesar Rome vs. Gaul from GMT. And again, it's on the shelf here to round things out. Kingmaker next to that. Now, that is an old game, and you can see it looks old. And there's a lot of old things about it. I've heard hints that this might be rebooted at some point, and we'll have to wait and see. Kingmaker, I played this game when I was a young teenager. Really liked a lot of the ideas in it. There's some crazy randomness in it, and of course the pieces need to be upgraded, but it's a classic, and that's why it's in the library. Then there's a new classic here, I suppose, Ancient Civilizations of the Inner Sea. Again, I don't know much about this, but again, it's in the library because I want to have as many war games as I can. All right, let's switch from war games now. The rest of this shelf is all about that train. All right, so here first we have Iberian Rails. I haven't played Iberian Rails, but I know the setting for it and a lot of the different games that it's similar to. Then we have a trio of games next to each other. So we're going to do these in reverse order as to when they came out. First, there's Age of Steam. Now, that Age of Steam you see there is the deluxe version that came out from Eagle Griffin. It's beautiful. But Age of Steam from Martin Wallace and John Bauer is a very vicious, mean train game, but it was in my top 10 at one point. I had played a lot fewer games then. The very strict nature of it has kind of dulled on me as years gone by, so it's not in my top games anymore, but I still have a lot of fond memories of playing it. Also, there's like 2 million maps for it. Now, Steam, which is a direct descendant of Age of Steam, is right next to it. I like Steam a little better than Age of Steam because it just works really well. It has the auction phase isn't as critical. It's a little more friendly to the players, and many of the Age of Steam maps also work for Steam. Although now with that Age of Steam, that beautiful production, it might be hard to pick Steam over that. And then Rolling Freight. Rolling Freight is a train game that uses dice. You roll these dice, and they let you do various actions based on what you roll. Now, this is not by the same designer as Age of Steam and Steam, but it's still a really solid train game, and I think I like it better than the other two. I also tend to like dice. Don't worry, it's not necessarily a random game. I mean, there is some randomness in it, but you're getting these dice, and these dice allow you to take actions, but the actions are still moving freight around a board. Then next to those is a little SteamRollers game. This is one of my favorite roll and writes, actually. This is a roll and write game that is essentially Age of Steam, the roll and write game. They didn't advertise it that way, but that's what it is, and I think it's really well done. Ride the Rails, next to that, is from Capstone Games. It's the second in their little train line. The first, Irish Gauge, is not a game that I particularly like, although if I still had it, I would probably put it in the library just to make it look nice. Irish Gauge is actually very similar to the last game on the shelf, Kansas Pacific, which I haven't played, from Queen. There's a lot of these games that are about trains and shares. They're very similar to 18XX games, but they're quote-unquote lighter. But Ride the Rails, I personally found this one to be a very interesting push your luck almost type of game as you're connecting train routes and getting points. It's just a really fascinating, really interactive game. And then I already mentioned Kansas Pacific here, another train game. So there's a lot of good games in this shelf. So when I go through it picking my favorite, Diplomacy is my least favorite by a mile. For this shelf, it's going to be Rolling Freight. There's a lot of great games here, from war games to train games. What's your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching the Dice Tower Library.